Hello and welcome. Part 1, Anatomy and Physiology of the Heart, words with Shawna. I said anatomy is to see how something's put together and physiology is how something works. A more technical definition from my old A&P textbook says that anatomy is the study of the structure of living organisms, and physiology is the study of the function of living organisms. So, why should you understand the anatomy and physiology of the heart? You have a heart, right? It's part of your body, and taking responsibility for yourself by educating yourself will help you take better care of yourself. Williamson, with the American Heart Association News, discusses the importance of keeping children's hearts healthy. Why? Because heart disease is a increasing problem and it builds up over time. It doesn't happen overnight. And teaching children good eating habits, appropriate exercise routines, and nutrition can help them fight cardiovascular disease. Williamson goes on to say, heart disease and stroke are typically considered adult problems, but a growing body of research links cardiovascular events that occur in midlife to risk factors that begin developing decades earlier in childhood. That's your obesity, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and smoking. I bring this up to say you're never too young to start taking care of your heart and improve your quality of life. In fact, the American Heart Association has that on their top 10 myths about cardiovascular disease, along with I'd know if I had high blood pressure because there would be warning signs. I'll know when I'm having a heart attack because I'll have chest pain. Diabetes won't harm my heart as long as I take my medication. Heart disease runs in my family, so there's nothing I can do to prevent it. I don't need to have my cholesterol checked until I'm middle aged. Heart failure means the heart stops beating. This pain in my legs must be a sign of aging. I'm sure it has nothing to do with my heart. My heart is beating really fast. I must be having a heart attack. And lastly, I should avoid exercise after having a heart attack. If any of these myths interest you, then I encourage you to find the link in my references, copy and paste it, and go read through them. They provide just a short little paragraph explaining why it is a myth. So I took the time in part 1 to explain and go over most of the terms that I'll be using today to build a foundation of understanding. Now, I'm not going to get into heart diseases because that's a different video, but I will be speaking regarding a typically healthy heart doing typically healthy things. So, when you take the time to learn about your body, you are building your toolkit for your health. And this toolkit is going to provide you with a foundation of knowledge to help you understand and follow along with what your care providers are trying to explain to you related to your heart and why your heart is behaving abnormally. Knowing the normal, that gives you a good foundation to start your knowledge. Now, I will be discussing new information to add to what you learned in part 1. I will discuss the veins and arteries that go in and out of the heart muscle. Why? Because most adults have cardiovascular disease, and it's important to understand where heart attacks occur, also called myocardial infarction or MI. I will introduce you to new veins and arteries in the body that will give you a foundation to build upon for later videos, especially when I start discussing different diseases and how they affect the anatomy and physiology of your body. And I would like to add the liver to the systemic circulatory system because I want to introduce you to the importance of the liver. So, the heart. If you watch part 1 of my Anatomy and Physiology of the Heart, Words with Shawna, I would like you to take a moment to recall the pericardium, the 4 chambers of the heart, the 4 valves, superior and inferior vena cava, the aorta, the electrical signal impulse, pulmonary circulation, and systemic circulation. So, the pericardium of the heart. Jarvis and Eckhardt state the pericardium is adherent to the great vessels, esophagus, sternum, pleurae, and is anchored to the diaphragm. The pleurae will be discussed further when I review the lungs, but per Jarvis and Eckhardt, the thin, slippery pleurae are serous membranes that form an envelope between the lungs and the chest wall. Now, the pericardium, which is this beautiful drawing around what's supposed to be my heart, was discussed further in part 1 with the different layers. But this pericardium is attached to the epicardium of the heart, which brings us to the 3 layers of the heart. And this is just to show you, this is supposed to be my heart, and this is the outer layer of the heart with the pink line going around it, the epicardium, and then it's attached to the pericardium, also called the pericardial sac. The 3 layers of the heart are the epicardium, which is the outermost layer of the heart, the myocardium, which is the middle muscle layer of the heart, and the endocardium, which is the inner layer of the heart, and per Jarvis and Eckhardt, is the thin layer of endothelial tissue that lines the inner surface of the heart chambers and valves. Now, to help me remember the 3 layers of the heart, I think about epi, the M in myocardium, and endo. Epi means above, and M stands for middle, and endo is in or within. So the epicardium, the outermost layer of the heart, is above the other 2 layers of the heart. And to get more technical, according to Vaskovich, the epicardium is made up of mesothelium, fats, and connective tissues. Even though the epicardium is the outermost layer of the heart, it is actually the visceral layer of the serous pericardium, which adheres to the myocardium of the heart. The myocardium is our middle layer of the heart with the M, and M is also for myo, which means muscle. The endocardium is the innermost layer of the heart, and it separates the blood in the heart chambers from the heart muscle tissue of the myocardium. And this layer keeps the blood in the heart to continue through circulation. And the Purkinje fibers can be found in the subendocardial connective tissue of the endocardium, per the digital histology. Let's review our blood circulation. Deoxygenated blood comes into the heart from the inferior and superior vena cavas to the right atrium. Then the SA node will fire the signal, and the blood is pushed through the tricuspid valve from the right atrium to the right ventricle. The right ventricle will receive the impulse from the Purkinje fibers, and it'll contract to push the deoxygenated blood through the pulmonary valve into the pulmonary arteries to the lungs. While in the lungs, the blood goes through the gas exchange to get rid of waste and take in oxygen. The newly oxygenated blood now will go from the lungs to the pulmonary veins into the left atrium, completing the pulmonary circulation. The left atrium here, and you can see where the pulmonary veins are coming into it to fill the left atrium. The left atrium will receive the electrical signal from the SA node and will push the oxygenated blood through the bicuspid valve into the left ventricle, and then the left ventricle will receive the electrical signal from the Purkinje fibers, contract, and it will send the oxygenated blood through the aortic valve, which will go into the aorta to start the systemic circulation throughout the body. If you recall from part 1, Anatomy and Physiology of the Heart, Words with Shawna, I mentioned arteries carry oxygenated blood away from the heart, and veins bring back deoxygenated blood to the heart. But there were 2 exceptions. The first exceptions are the pulmonary arteries. So if we're looking at this drawing, the blue is our deoxygenated blood. We come into the right atrium through the valve to the right ventricle. And from the right ventricle, the deoxygenated blood leaves through the pulmonary valve into the pulmonary arteries to be carried away from the heart to the lungs. The second exceptions are the pulmonary veins that carry oxygenated blood back to the heart to the left atrium. So your oxygenated blood, gas exchange has occurred in the lungs, and the oxygenated blood comes through our pulmonary veins into the left atrium. On the heart model, you see the red and blue. To keep things simple, we in the health profession may say red equals arteries and blue equals veins. But technically, red is oxygenated blood and blue is deoxygenated blood. Looking at my heart model here, you can see the pulmonary arteries. And then if we turn it around, I'll just hold it here. You can see the pulmonary arteries, and they are blue because they're carrying deoxygenated blood away from the heart. Now, the pulmonary veins, which are here and here, are bringing oxygenated blood back to the heart. Our muscles need oxygenated blood, and it's no different for our heart muscle. The heart muscle, just like our other muscles, has red for the arteries going in and out of the muscle to carry oxygenated blood, and blue for the veins taking away deoxygenated blood and waste out of the heart muscle. Now, as we learned in part 1, there is a right and left side of the heart, and it's going to be separated by this septum. And we're going to have a right coronary artery, RCA, and a left coronary artery, LCA. The left is going to supply blood to the left side of the heart, and the right is going to supply blood to the right side of the heart. According to Johns Hopkins Medicine, since coronary arteries deliver blood to the heart muscle, any coronary artery disorder or disease can have serious implications by reducing the flow of oxygen and nutrients to the heart muscle. This can lead to a heart attack and possibly death. Johns Hopkins Medicine also goes on to say that atherosclerosis, a buildup of plaque in the inner lining of an artery, causing it to narrow or become blocked, is the most common cause of heart disease. And as I mentioned earlier about teaching our children to take better care of their health, this is not something that occurs overnight. This is built up over the years, okay? So you can see where it's so narrow, you can't go through, and then this clot is getting stuck. It can't go past it. So it's about to cut off blood flow from here. They're not going to have any blood flowing into here to split off because it's so blocked. The first question is, how does oxygenated blood leave the heart and go into the heart muscle? If you remember from part 1, our heart has two sides, a right side and a left side, and it's separated by the septal wall. And when the left ventricle has that oxygenated blood that's going through the aortic valve into the aorta, we have tiny openings here. This is the opening of the right coronary artery, RCA. This is the opening for the left coronary artery, LCA. I'll put the face back on. And you can see here, the right coronary artery is coming out and around the right side of the heart to supply oxygenated blood. And the left coronary artery actually splits into two arteries. You have the left anterior descending. It goes down the front of the heart along the septal wall to the apex. And then you have the circumflex that comes around the side of the left side of the heart and down the back side of the left side of the heart. Now, if you remember also from part 1, the left side has more muscle mass than the right side, and that is because the left side of your heart has to pump the blood throughout your whole body, and the right side is just pumping from the heart to the lungs, so it doesn't have far to go. And the arteries, as you can see here, they're branching and getting smaller and smaller, and then they continue to get smaller and go into what we call a microvascular network. Now, in that network, your arteries, and then you have these veins, and then the veins are taking all the waste and the deoxygenated blood away. So in that microvascular network, teeny tiny veins are coming together to make bigger veins. And as you can see here, you see different branches coming together, and then it makes a bigger vein. And then the bigger veins are coming together to meet at the coronary sinus, which is the largest vein of the heart. Now, the coronary sinus goes in here into our right atrium. So you can see it there. This is our right atrium. So when I take this off, this little hole right here, that is where the coronary sinus drains that deoxygenated blood into our right atrium to go through the pulmonary circulation. Now, while we're here, there is a fun fact that I want to share. So this blue right here, that is called the fossa ovalis. Now, it's in the right atrium of the heart, and it was once an opening between the right and left atria through that septal wall. And we had that opening because there was a valve called the foramen ovale, and it would allow the blood to bypass the lungs and go straight to the left side of the heart. Now, why would we need that? Well, when babies are developing, they don't have lungs, and then they have lungs. But when they have the lungs, they're not using those lungs in the mommy's belly. Instead, the mom is doing the gas exchange in her lungs, and that oxygen-rich blood is going through the umbilical cord to the baby, and that blood just follows the heart circulation, goes through here, out here, and then throughout the baby's body, and then carries back to the mom so she can do gas exchange. Now, ideally, once the baby is born, the foramen ovale will close, and the baby will start breathing with their lungs, and the formation here again of the fossa ovalis begins. At this point, I would like to discuss the arteries and veins of the body from the heart. So we have upper body veins and arteries, and we have lower body veins and arteries. We're going to start with the arteries. So our heart sits about here. That's why I keep putting it here in this position. And we have what we call the aortic arch. So if you remember, the left ventricular area is pushing oxygenated blood into the aorta, and it's coming up to the aortic arch. And we have these three little things here. So this is the right side brachiocephalic trunk, and this is our left common carotid artery. This is our left subclavian artery. Okay? Now, set this back where it goes. And if you notice too, the left side is pointing forward. The right side is more to the back. Just a good thing to know there. Okay, so the right brachiocephalic is going to come up and branch into the right common carotid artery that's going to supply oxygenated blood to the neck and all the way up to the head to the brain. And then the other branch off of the right brachiocephalic artery is going to be our right subclavian artery. So subclavian. Sub means below, and clavian means around the clavicle. So clavicle's here, subclavian below the clavicle. And then same thing here. We've got the left common carotid artery that goes up the left side of the neck, up to the head, into the left side of the brain. And then we've got the left subclavian artery. Again, it's below the clavicle. So the left subclavian artery comes here. Now, I have a beautiful drawing. It's gorgeous to kind of help map out for you. So I'm going to show on me first because I feel like I am a good model. So we have the left subclavian artery that's going to go to the axillary artery. Then we've got a deep brachial artery, and that's going to split into the brachial artery that you can feel the pulse here. And then we've got the ulnar collateral arteries through here. Now, the brachial artery is going to come to our radial artery, which is thumb side, and the ulnar collateral arteries are going to come to our ulnar artery, which is pinky side. And you can feel a pulse at both locations, and just like you can feel a pulse at the axillary. Now, show you this so I can look. So this is the aortic arch that I was talking about, okay? And this is where we've got the right brachiocephalic trunk, and then you've got the right common carotid artery going up the neck to the head and the brain, and then you've got the right subclavian artery. Over here, you've got the left common carotid artery going up the neck to the head to the brain, and then here you've got your left subclavian artery come into the axillary artery, the deep brachial artery, and then you've got the brachial artery, and then the ulnar collateral arteries, brachial artery to the radial artery, and then the ulnar collateral arteries to the ulnar radial. Now again, all the arteries will branch off and become smaller and smaller and smaller and make up the microvascular network. And then our veins from the microvascular network become bigger and bigger and bigger as they become one, and we get the veins of the arm, which all go from wrist to up here. But I am only going to name the veins that mirror the arteries that we talked about, because if you look at this little person here, look at all those arteries and veins. We are not covering all that. We're going to go with the basics here. Now, we have the radial. So starting here, microvascular system has gotten together to create bigger veins. We have the radial vein here, and we have the ulnar vein here. Now, these two veins are going to come to make the brachial vein, which is going to come all the way up to the axillary vein, subclavian vein, and then you've got the left brachiocephalic vein, okay? So we have right subclavian vein and right brachiocephalic vein. Now, whenever the blood is draining from the brain, it's going to come down both sides of the neck. You have an interior jugular and an exterior jugular. So you have your right exterior jugular vein, right interior jugular vein, and those are coming into the right brachiocephalic vein. Then you have the left interior jugular vein, left exterior jugular vein that are coming into the left brachiocephalic vein. And then here you can see where you have the ulnar vein and the radial vein coming into the brachial vein, up to the axillary vein, to the subclavian vein, and into the left brachiocephalic vein. Now, the left brachiocephalic vein and the right brachiocephalic vein, they come together to drain all the upper body blood that's deoxygenated into our right atrium. So, looking at my heart model, you see here how it's branched. So, ideally, if it was to continue, you'd see a branch here too. So, this would be our left brachiocephalic vein coming into the superior vena cava, and we're going to call this the right brachiocephalic vein coming into the superior vena cava. And of course, from there, you can see that little hole is where the superior vena cava drains into this right atrium. Now, let us talk about lower body arteries and veins. So, a diaphragm. Hold on. I threw it on the floor. Okay. This is a diaphragm. This little thing that you see here. So the diaphragm is going to separate your chest organs from your stomach organs, okay? Now, on my little stick figure thing I drew, you can see the diaphragm here, okay? Now, from our aortic arch, we have what's called the descending aorta, okay? So here's our aortic arch, and then the aorta that comes down is our descending aorta. Now, the descending aorta is separated by two names. The thoracic aorta is what's in the chest cavity area, and then from the diaphragm down is the abdominal aorta. Now, this area is our hip area, and the aorta splits into a left common iliac artery and a right common iliac artery. This is where our aorta itself ends. So, now when you hear the word common with the arteries and veins, think of like a common room. So, a living room where people come together. And that's the case with the common veins. It's just a main vein, main artery. It's a main vessel. Okay, so now I am going to take this moment to introduce another branch from the abdominal aorta because I said I want to introduce the liver. So we have a celiac artery. It comes off the upper part of the abdominal aorta, and from it you get the left gastric artery and the splenic artery. And then over here, you've got the common hepatic artery. And we'll go into more detail in a little bit over the liver. But I want you to have an idea of where this celiac artery is and the three main arteries coming from it. Okay, so now back to the veins. Now, the hip area where you have the right common iliac vein or artery and the left common iliac vein or artery. When you're doing the veins, we're going to come up the body. So the right common and left common iliac arteries are going to deliver oxygenated blood all the way down the legs, all the way to the toes, and branch off in multiple ways to make a microvascular network. Now, for it to take the deoxygenated blood into the veins, we are going to, again, the microvascular network will come together and make bigger and bigger veins, and they'll come all the way up to the left and right common iliac veins, which will come together and start the inferior vena cava. So we don't have the inferior vena cava separated by thoracic or abdominal here, but you can see where these hip area veins come together, and our inferior vena cava starts, and it's delivering deoxygenated blood back up to the right atrium to go through the gas exchange. Now, you can also see that we have veins coming from the liver to the inferior vena cava, and they're real simple names. They are the right hepatic vein, middle hepatic vein, and left hepatic vein. And of course, our little diaphragm. Hepatic just refers to the liver. So now that we've had that beautiful art, this is what I drew to kind of just show you both together. With all the names, which is a little overwhelming, so that's why I ended up separating it. Now, let's talk about the liver. So let me check my notes to see where I'm at. Okay, so the liver and the circulatory system. We've got the arteries and veins, and we touched on the arteries that go to the liver and the veins that leave the liver. So now I made a close-up drawing of the liver with its veins and arteries. So as you can see here, we've got the thoracic aorta, the diaphragm, abdominal aorta, and then we've got the inferior vena cava, which would continue further. I just didn't want to get in the way of the words. So we've got our diaphragm, and we've got the abdominal aorta. The celiac trunk is here, and here I drew it where you can see the left gastric artery leaving, the splenic artery leaving, and then we have the common hepatic artery. Again, common. It's like a gathering place. So the common hepatic artery has all these branches off of it that go to other abdominal organs. We have the right gastric artery and the gastroduodenal artery here. And then this section has nothing branching off of it, like it's done branching. And it's called the proper hepatic artery because it is the hepatic artery only. It's just going straight to it. And it branches into a right hepatic artery and a left hepatic artery. And I drew 3 lobes to show you right, middle, and left. So it's just a basic drawing of left going to left and right going to right. Now, the veins that leave the liver go into the inferior vena cava, okay? You have the right hepatic vein, again, simple name. It goes into the common hepatic vein. We have the middle hepatic vein into the common hepatic vein, the left hepatic vein going into the common hepatic vein, okay? And then the common hepatic vein goes into the inferior vena cava to go back to the right side of the heart. Now, looky here. We have a hepatic portal vein. So that one, we have, this is sending blood and nutrients from our digestive system. So like our intestines and our stomach, where we're breaking down stuff that we eat and drink, that is being sent through the hepatic portal vein into the lobes of the liver. And then the liver is going to filter that, I was going to say information, but it filters that blood and nutrients and whatever you ate or drank or what medications or alcohol or drugs, it's all being filtered in the liver. And then all that filtered mess that it goes through, it kicks out the filtered nutrients and filtered medicine and filtered everything. Like all of that filtered nice stuff gets kicked out to go into the inferior vena cava to go into our systemic circulation. And then all the bad stuff which we'll have to get into more whenever we get to the liver. But basically, all the bad stuff is going to get kicked out, and it will go into the digestive system to be excreted by calling it feces, and it will go to the kidneys to be voided out. So I want to discuss, let me find it on here. I found a few blood-related functions of the liver from different sources that I want to share. But first, I would like to read what Newman wrote about the liver, because it's a power horse for sure. Newman writes, "The liver is the largest solid organ in the body. It carries out over 500 tasks and plays an essential role in digestion. The role of the liver includes detoxification, protein synthesis, and the production of chemicals that help digest food." So here are a few of the blood-related functions of the liver that I got from different sources, and I'll try to make it flow. So the main points are going to be by Newman. Newman mentions absorbing and metabolizing bilirubin. So the breakdown of hemoglobin forms bilirubin. The liver or bone marrow stores iron released from the hemoglobin, which makes the next generation of blood cells. Pretty important. Newman says it supports blood clots. Vitamin K is necessary to create coagulants that help clot the blood. Bile is essential for vitamin K absorption and forms in the liver. The liver forms that bile that breaks down the food and stuff. The liver must produce enough bile to make clotting factors. InformedHealth.org adds, with the help of vitamin K, the liver produces proteins, some of which are important in blood clotting. It is also one of the organs that break down old or damaged blood cells. Now, here for a moment, I just want to also clarify, the liver is also a gland. It is an organ and a gland. So if you look up anything on the liver and it's saying gland, it's both. Metabolizing carbohydrates. Newman says the liver stores carbohydrates. The body can break down stored carbohydrates in the liver, known as glycogen, into glucose. Now, the glucose or sugar is released into the bloodstream to regulate blood sugar levels and for a quick burst of energy. In addition, InformedHealth.org wrote, in the metabolism of carbohydrates, the liver helps to ensure that the level of sugar in your blood glucose, stays constant. If your blood sugar levels increase, for example, after a meal, the liver removes sugar from the blood supplied by our portal vein and stores it in the form of glycogen. If someone's blood sugar levels are too low, the liver breaks down the glycogen and releases sugar into the blood. As well as sugar, the liver also stores vitamins and minerals like iron and copper and releases them into the blood when needed. Now, Newman says on the vitamin and mineral storage, the liver stores fat-soluble vitamins known as vitamins A, D, E, K, and B12. It keeps significant amounts of these vitamins stored. The liver stores iron from the hemoglobin in the form of ferritin, ready to make new blood cells. The liver also stores and releases copper. For filtering the blood, Newman says the liver filters and removes compounds from the body, including hormones such as estrogen and aldosterone, and compounds from outside the body, including alcohol and other drugs. According to Lott, the liver takes in arterial and venous blood and mixes it. The oxygen and other substances that are added to or removed from the blood, the oxygenation of the blood and respiratory enzymes, and the blood the blood is rich in microsomal enzymes. Those are all mixed around together within the liver and sorted out before the liver sends the blood back to the heart. So it just mixes it all around, which we'll get into. It's a very, very messy thing, but it mixes it all around, and then it comes out of the liver through our right, left, middle hepatic veins to the common hepatic vein, to the inferior vena cava, to go to the heart and go into the systemic circulation. Now, Cleveland Clinic wrote the liver filters or cleans the blood, removing toxins and waste that eventually leave the body through urine and feces. InformedHealth.org wrote, the liver also plays an important role in the metabolism of proteins. Liver cells change amino acids in foods so that they can be used to produce energy or make carbohydrates or fats. A toxic substance called ammonia is a byproduct of this process, and the liver cells convert ammonia to a much less toxic substance called urea, which is released into the blood, and the urea is then transported to the kidneys and passes out of the body in urine. Production of albumin. Newman says albumin is the most common protein in blood serum. It transports fatty acids and steroid hormones to help support the correct pressure and prevent the leaking of blood vessels. Synthesis of angiotensinogen by Newman says this hormone raises blood pressure by narrowing the blood vessels when alerted by the production of an enzyme called renin in the kidneys. Let's think for a minute here too. If you're taking a medicine that causes your veins to narrow, and you already have this teeny tiny gap, and then we're going to narrow your veins, which is going to push this together, you're going to cut off blood flow. So this is why you got to know these things. All right, anyways. Cleans toxins. Cleveland Clinic says it cleans toxins, harmful substances out of the blood. InformedHealth.org wrote, blood coming from the digestive organs flows through the portal vein to the liver, carrying nutrients, medication, and also toxic substances. Once they reach the liver, these substances are processed, stored, altered, detoxified, and passed back into the blood or released in the bowel to be eliminated. Cleveland Clinic also says it regulates the amount of blood in the body. Biology Insights team, they wrote, the venous outflow from the liver ensures that deoxygenated blood and metabolic byproducts are efficiently removed. Blood exits the liver through the hepatic veins, which, as I said, you've got right, middle, and left hepatic veins that come into the common hepatic vein into the inferior vena cava. And those drain into the inferior vena cava, returning to the heart. This pathway is vital for maintaining circulatory balance and ensuring the liver's processed blood is reintegrated into the systemic circulation. So during my explanation on the liver in the circulatory system and what all it does to help the body, I mentioned a lot of other organs that are also involved in the systemic system. And this is just meant to be an introduction for us to build upon. I will not go into each organ that's in the systemic system. Instead, when that organ comes up for a topic, I will refer back to the circulatory system and bring you forward into that organ. Okay, and then for the heart, basically, I just want you to understand the ins and outs of your heart. You need to know how it is at a normal functioning, how everything works, and that way, if you have something abnormal going on, you at least know what normal is supposed to be. And when I discuss diseases and how they affect the heart or how the heart affects them, I want you to be able to follow along with what I'm talking about. So I hope this information is helpful, and I hope you found value in it, and thank you for watching. Bye.